for the Shell liveWIRE program for the past 2 years, and it's quite insightful. So without further ado, I'm going to pass to Mr. Yip, and I think we'll mute all the mic for now. If you have any questions, just post them on the chat, and maybe Mr. Yip can respond to them from time to time. All right, thank you guys.
All right, I think that's the cue for me to start talking, right?
Yes, you can share your screen.
No, I have actually shared my slides earlier. Would it be Azwar or Johan? You can actually share from your end.
Johan, can you do the honor?
Either one of you. All right, great. All right, guys, first of all, a very good afternoon. Now, for today's session, don't worry, take it a bit more relaxed, right? I will say that I will do actually my presentation in as relaxed way that I could. So you guys actually please reciprocate with me on this one. After all, it's a Sunday afternoon. Now, first of all, again, thanks Azwar for the quick introductions. Now, you all can call me Yip, right? Can drop the Mr. Make me feel actually a bit old, right? So I'm currently the senior, so-called the senior procurement managers, heading actually the excellence team, the supply chain excellence team for our Shell Malaysia's outfit. Right, a bit of audio and visual check. All you all can actually see the screens right now. I mean, I think it's actually with my front page with a big title of stepping up to be an upstream oil and gas contractors. Right, very good, fantastic. I know that. Now, for here today, I know that quite a number of you are esteemed entrepreneurs. Some maybe actually just started into this business. Some maybe already have done some time, I would say, in the market, and then you are sort of like have some grits actually in terms of how to run the business itself. Now, what I'm actually intent today is to give you guys a bit of a glimpse when you talk about the the upstream contracting businesses. How is that happening, right? A bit of probably some basic knowledge and some facts for you guys actually to apprehend with, so you can actually get a bit of some of actually the visualization, how's actually the upstream business is all about. Now, I know that actually for some of you who may not be aware, there is always a bit of a saying in the market that the upstream businesses, the upstream contracting opportunities are purely only for the big boys, right? I still remember, I recall in one of the session that I had, I think probably actually 2 years ago in liveWIRE, where I started off my session with a very generic question, right? Asking actually the participants out there to saying that, do you think what you're doing, the business that you are doing, has any connections to the upstream? Now, majority of the people actually does not raise up their hands because they don't really see what they are doing is actually has any connections with the upstream business, right? So let me actually try into that same approach again. Just actually to let you guys visualize in the upstream businesses, right? Of course, you got various from the explorations, development, productions, maintenance, and also of course abandonment. Now, throughout this whole entire supply chain, there's one thing that you guys actually can see physically is actually there will be an offshore platform. Now, within actually the offshore platform, aside from all the pipes, all the pumps, all the other machineries, right? What do we have? We also have people inside there, right? And the people inside there, they will actually require all the necessities actually as like you and me. Things like actually their daily provisions, food, even actually toiletries and all the stuff, right? So if you actually expand that supply chain, you would see where your business actually will get connected to it, right? And only through that kind of a visualization, I started to have seen my participants at that point of time start to raise up their hands because they are saying that, oh, I'm actually doing a paper recycling businesses using that actually to do food wrapper. Now I could see how I can get connected to the upstream business. Another party can tell me that, oh, we are doing actually clothing and some apparel, but oh, the upstream people, they require a fire protection, so-called clothing. This is actually another avenue that I can actually be participating into this upstream business, right? So I'll leave you to one or two on that, just actually to make sure that you don't cocoon yourself to saying that the upstream business are purely just only for the main boys. And use that same principle for you to actually visualize of any supply chain that you're interested with. Think broad, think critical, right? Think of actually the demand, and from that demand, you will actually come out with your solutions. Okay, so that's I think that's a fundamental principle being as an entrepreneur, and that's I think that's where I bring you guys actually to here today. All right, now if can you move actually to the next slide? Now let me just quickly give you guys a glimpse through. There will be three key components that I'm going to share today. First is actually about your general awareness. I will talk about, give you a bit of some knowledge, how actually the upstream business in Malaysia is actually being formed. What are the structure? What are the concepts behind it? I will introduce you to you guys actually some jargons, but don't worry. I took the liberty actually to take away all the abbreviations and then give you actually the full name so you can get a full comprehension to that. Now, second part of it, I will share with you who are the players within the upstream market, and that will be actually the segment number 2. And then the third segment is actually where I'm going to share with you a bit about the contracting and procurement. Let's say if you're interested to go into this business, what are the things you need to be aware of? What are the elements that you need to get yourself prepared for? Right? Now, let's move forward on the next slide, please. And next one, sorry, put a bit of a header here. Now, first of all, you guys actually have to be aware in Malaysia, right? We are all governed in the upstream business, downstream business, or even the midstream business. Whenever there's a business in regards to actually to petroleum, right, or hydrocarbon per se, we are all governed by this Petroleum Development Act, PDA 1974. So if you do a bit of a Googling, you could see that this is also actually a bit of the year where Petronas is actually being established. And Petronas is established as a vessel to represent the Malaysia government. So they hold all the exclusive rights, the power, the liberty, the privileges in regards to actually all the main activities involving to, the extraction business of hydrocarbon in Malaysia, onshore dengan offshore. Now, the term onshore, offshore basis, if you look at it physically, is talking about those on land, onshore, and those actually on the sea, we call it the offshore business. Now, of course, Petronas it itself, no strangers to everyone. Everyone know them. They are our national oil company. And Petronas actually play a lot of roles. And one of the prominent roles is actually they play both as the regulator body and also actually they are the operator within the upstream business. Okay, and when I say they are regulator body, as I reiterated earlier, they represent the government of Malaysia and they regulate all of us, all the main players actually within this upstream in Malaysia itself. Okay, now the relationship that we had with Petronas, we have actually each and every of the specific field that we call, we will actually have an agreement with Petronas. And the agreement can actually have a lifespan of between 40 over years to 50 over years to 60 over years. It depends actually on the whole entire commercial negotiation. And this agreement is called the Production Sharing Contract, PSC, in short. And there's also another form called the Risk Service Contract, which is RSC in short. Okay. Now let's move on to the next slide itself, right? If you look at the whole entire concept, PSC is actually between Petronas and us. When I say us, is you could see all the big logos on the right-hand side of this screen. And we call ourselves as the Petroleum Agreement Contractor, PAC in short. Okay, so within here, Petronas actually will award the execution of all the main activities from exploration all the way to productions to all PACs. Okay, and for between us, there will be actually an element what we call as a cost recovery, where basically every of our expenses incur, there will be actually a certain regulations that we will going to recover it from Petronas. Okay, so that's actually what we call the production sharing contract. That's how it works. In short, right, to simplify the whole entire relationship of it, basically Petronas is the biggest paymaster when it comes into Malaysia upstream operation. Okay, So that then you guys will be much aware of it, why this is important, right? Because they are being actually the primary paymaster. They basically regulate the whole entire expenses, the procurement and all that, right? So we are all forced into the governance of a Petronas requirement. That there's a certain processes, even on the contracting part of it, it is actually we are all aligned with Petronas. And this is actually the beauty of our Malaysia business. That means if you are familiar, manage actually to get a contract with one of the PAC, the one on the right hand side that I'm showing to you, basically you will have the chance to do the same to all the rest of the PAC. Because all, as I mentioned, we are all running under the same governance by Petronas. Okay, fantastic, right? I mean, keep that in mind, right? If you can get yourself familiar and get into one, there are chances actually for you to actually address with all the opportunity with the rest of the PACs. Okay, so that's actually your set another key takeaway. Now let's move on to actually to the next slide. Sorry, next slide, please. Okay. Now let's move on, right? Well, this is going to get a bit slightly technical. Bear with me, right? But this is very, very essential. So when I mentioned to you guys earlier, governance, right? That means actually we are all good thing about in Malaysia. We are all running under the same guidelines and all that. Now, for being able to participate in any contracting or tendering opportunity with any PAC in Malaysia, first thing first, you must be a Petronas licensed vendor. Okay, that's the prerequisite. You want to get yourself into any business actually for upstream in Malaysia, you must first get yourself registered as a Petronas licensed vendor, right? Now, you may say that, wow, that sounds, quite traumatic, right? What exactly does this mean, right? Now, Petronas actually through their guideline very smartly. They have actually put in different categories and scoping, and they have they label that under this SWET. This is the 4-letter words that you may want to go and get yourself familiar with. SWEC, SWET. It actually stands for Standardized Work and Equipment Categories. Now, under this SWET, basically it helps if you want to do catering, if you want to do line pipe, you want to go and do painting, whatever the job scopes that you can actually offer, it is actually the first thing you need to find which SWET will fit most to your services, whether it's actually the services or the material that you actually can offer by your company. And from that SWET, it will clearly depict what are the minimum technical requirements, MTR for short. Okay. Now, through this approach, you will then have a so-called a clear, so-called a checklist or the minimum requirement of what does it require in terms of experiences, licensings, capital pay up, and all the others actually prerequisite for you to fulfill before you can actually apply as a Petronas vendor. Okay, so here the loops of it. To be in the business, you got to be actually a Petronas vendor. To be a Petronas vendor, you identify what will be the right SWET for your business. And by identifying what's the right SWET of the business, you look at the MTR. What is the minimum technical requirement for you, your company, and the folks actually within your company? Okay, and the requirement I would say is ranges, depends actually on the complexities actually of the scopes that you actually wanted to apply for. Okay, and all this executed under what we call as a Petronas procurement manual. Okay, this is the manual. Basically, it's a Bible for all of us, for all the PAC. This is how we operate in Malaysia. So again, I repeat myself. That's why I say that if you successfully get into one particular PAC, you basically already sort of like get yourself that kind of familiarity with the rest. All right. Now let's move on to the next slide. Now come a bit to Shell. All right. So just let you guys actually to go through again. I want to go and crash the myth on the ground. Right? I have actually gave this kind of talks almost, don't know, lost count of it, how many times already. Every time when I go to Q&A, right, I will always actually get this kind of similar questions from the audience, is that they will ask me, Mr. Ye, how do I register with Shell? Okay. So let me repeat that again. As I say, for Malaysia upstream operation, you will own, your prerequisite is to be registered with Petronas. And once you do that, you don't need to register with Shell, Exxon, Hess, whichever company that you're referring to. Okay, that is basically the only ticket of your entry into the business here. Now, what Shell do? Let's say if I have a tender that I need to actually so-called submit out, right? I would just actually choose from the list of those vendors that is already approved in Petronas list. And I don't do this I would say that just by my own discretion, that is our obligation when it comes actually into this Petronas governance. So again, let me repeat, right? You don't need some sort of going through another form of registrations per se with Shell. Okay. Now, for us, we will follow in regards to the how to say that, based on each and every of the threat, what will be its requirement. But for us, we have a specific interest in the area that we operate, being actually Sabah and Sarawak, where we actually prioritize, not saying prioritize also, I would say that we also focus in terms of developing opportunities for local states companies. Okay. And we have actually done that a lot in quite a number of our operational contracts, right? When I mention about operational contracts, I would say that those are the contracts of folks that are doing on our facilities, on our so-called the cleaning, waste disposal services, catering, stationery, right? You name it. Most of actually that to keep our lights on. Those actually to how say to support us into our day-to-day operation. I would say we have actually put tremendous focus to actually enable more majority of this is actually being supported by local states, so-called companies, be it actually Sabah or Sarawak. Now, in terms of actually how we award to the whoever actually the final bidders or final winners to that, is always actually latching on two key principles that you must be technically acceptable and commercially competitive, I would say. Right? I may actually wanted to revise this tag. It not necessary to be the lowest. Okay, it must be commercially competitive. Right? So technically acceptable and commercially competitive. Now, next slide, please. Now, key processes within the actually the procurement. Okay, I know that some of you may say that, oh, this sounds actually so boring, but don't worry. Let me actually cut the pain very short to you. Basically, it will be just only 3 key phases, from tender, when we actually start actually preparing for our tender plan, to the tendering process itself, and the third one is just a post-award. Basically, only these 3 processes. Okay, and the general concepts, most of our contract will be lasted about between 2 years to 3 years. Some actually may be longer to 5 years, right? So it's basically the whole entire tender plan process is talking about for us understanding who's is available in the market and all that. Now, this is actually one area that you guys can help us, because we don't know what we don't know. So if you let's say that have a services or the material that you deem actually will be suitable for the upstream business, I only have one pledge, right? I'm sorry, one so-called urge for you guys actually to work on is tell us. Okay, tell us what you can offer. Tell us actually what your business is all about. I will show you later on how will you able to do so. Now, the second part of it, of course, we are talking about tendering process, right? Not going to dwell very deep onto that. But the key thing for this one, I will just need to let you guys know is that, first of all, be clear of what you can offer, okay? And preparation. Preparation in terms of actually be clear of what's needed. What's needed actually in regards to the tender plan. The tender plan will basically tell you, I mean, through many, many years, actually how we work on it, right? We have actually formed that kind of ingenuity that when you go into the tender plan, if you read it in details, you already have the full understanding of what's basically required. Now, Why I actually emphasize a lot on this preparation, because even with some of the seasoned contractors that we deal with, right, we could always actually see a lot of people, they actually under prepared and they make a lot of assumptions. So when they go inside there, from a very technically strong and commercially competitive vendors, right, you can just flunk the whole process. It's just because you take things for granted. So preparation is the key here. Now, the third part is actually when we talk about the post-award, right? This is where the magics happen. That means actually you already successfully got the deal from Shell, and it doesn't end there. Okay, one thing that that we are treating all our suppliers here, it is not a transactional relationship. In short, during at the post-award, that's where you're going to feel the strong collaboration, right? Where you work with the folks in Shell, the contract holder, on how to execute your contract into its most optimum area. And throughout this particular process, this relationship of between 2 to 3 years, right? After that, it will make you even more stronger. It will make you even much more competitive, right? Because we are talk about strict KPIs. We talk about how to actually a partnership between Shell and the vendor, right? To deliver values on the table, to uncover even much more opportunity. And just imagine what can be done within that 2 to 3 years period. And this is actually one area that if you ask around in terms of the market, right, people will always say that, yeah, you have a contract with Shell, right? You are felt like you're very well taken care of, right? Because after that, Shell will sort of like going to teach you in terms of how to beef up your safety, how to improve your technical capability. Some, I would say, even to the extent of how to run your business. Okay, I think you guys already get some glimpse of it in terms of actually some of the session that you've gone through the liveWIRE, right? You can see it is focused on the consultation part of it. Okay, first of all, I'm not doing a sundry shop here, so I don't actually just display the contract. You grab it and then that's it, just run. Yeah. Sorry, probably you want to mute on that side, right? I think actually it's getting more and more exciting already. But let me back to this point to saying that, remember, okay, when you manage to successfully get a contract with Shell, right, the end of the road is not just by getting the contract. Getting the contract can, trust me, it's just the beginning of a very exciting yet challenging, right, a collaborative chapter. So if any of you, I would say in the near future, or you actually in the future, you got that kind of opportunity, recall yourself and bring yourself back into today's conversation on what I'm actually telling you. Okay, when you manage to get that, that's the beginning of actually a lot of excitement to you. So treasure that opportunity. Reason I'm saying that because I do actually have to be honestly to tell you guys, we had some good local companies who successfully got our contract after months and months of tendering. Blood and sweat all come out already. Midnight oil, trust me, all done. When they got the contract, that's it. They just celebrate and then they forget to move on. And after from there, we should see performance that you keep dwindling. To one extent, actually, they can't cope and handle with the pressure, they give up, right? So please be reminded, right? If you well, good thing is actually this session is recorded. Keep in your good faith, right? Play back to it. Remember, actually, when you really got the contract with Shell in the future, first thing first, before you celebrate with your team, is actually play back this video. Be reminded about this, what I'm actually telling you guys. Okay, now let's move on actually to the next slide. That's just the animation. Okay, all right. Now, I don't think I actually need to go through in details of that, but just actually to tell you, these are some of the key processes involved in our typical procurement processes. It will always actually look on the pre-qualification, on the tender, the invitation, the bid proposal, and also the evaluation process itself. So probably what just wanted to emphasize on the tender invitation, as I mentioned earlier, if you are registered with Petronas within that particular thread, you are invited. In short, if I'm actually going to actually award so-called, I'm sending out actually a tender, an invitation for, let's say it's a thread A, B, C, right? And if there is 100 vendors within Petronas, and under the Petronas registration that has registered under SWAT A, B, C, the whole entire 100 vendors will be invited. Okay, that's why I say very crucial for you. Be sure also that you are selecting the right SWAT that is really to the services and the material that you're about to offer. Okay, so that's actually the beauty about this concept that we had actually for our Malaysia upstream operations. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now some of you may be puzzling when you keep talking about technical evaluation. So what does it really mean? Do I need to be very technically, very savvy, very know actually of all the upstream lingo and the jargons and all that, right? I can tell you it's a bit of a yes or no. Depends actually what you're offering. But I'm actually listed here about 9 items that you should pay attention when we talk about that, when we go for our technical evaluation. If you're sort of like supplying a particular material of equipment, definitely it will look at actually your equipment technical specification. And Shell being Shell, we have a bit of a special interest. We will like to actually look on the personal, both actually the qualification and experience, because this actually leads to one of the key enablers where we wanted to uphold the highest standard actually of the safety within actually of our daily operation. So one of the things actually we do believe is actually safety is actually made real through the people. So we want to make sure that the people that we so-called get involved in within our supply chain are those actually people that is qualified to do so, right? Malaysianization is a requirement as part and parcel actually of our obligation that we wanted to work in anywhere that we operate, not only just in Malaysia. You can name it Kazakhstan, Nigeria, Brazil, UK. It's always actually our fundamental principles actually to build our supply chain to the local states or the local companies. Because we do believe in terms of your supply chain, right? Bringing that proximity is actually where we have to enrich the community, right? Now, of course, item 4 and 5 is pretty much the centric on the SWAT that we are going to go ask for actually for the award. It will look at actually both yourself, and when you talk about the principal, who will be the partner that you're working at. And again, it's look at actually the 2 key things, the experience and also the capability. They will also look at, in terms of item number 6, your tactical approach on how you mobilize both actually the equipment and personnel, right? And I think this is even much more apparent, especially during this kind of situation that we are facing. Right? I mean, the whole COVID situation, you won't know when next actually the border will be closed and all that. So item number 6 is very essential because it will tell in terms of the efficiency and the assurance on how you're able to actually deliver your contractual obligations. HSSC safety performance, definitely, I think we have a very low tolerance on this one. Basically, we want to ensure that people that we hire is safe, because we want to make sure that you are safe, we are safe, right? Terms and conditions, you gotta be actually well versed, as I mentioned. Tender plan, read that. Okay, if you read that, you'll be clear, no surprises to you. And 9, of course, obviously, we look at also your financial standing in terms of actually not only where you are currently, but also looking at how you are when you are sort of like able to get the contract and executing the contract itself. Okay, so all this, the list is not exhaustive, but that's actually some of the fundamental of it. Okay, now thanks actually for the next slide itself. As I mentioned earlier, as of right now, not only that what I'm actually telling you, I will focus on the local content, but we also internally, we have a policy that driven us not only from the contracting and procurement department, but basically it's actually everyone across our organizations, right? With this simple statement of saying that we will support the development of the local capacity and capabilities in the oil and gas industry, okay? And to enhance and sustain this local content for the greater benefits. Now, we have also successfully, through this motion, bringing from entrepreneur to local supplier, from local supplier to regional contender, and from a regional contender to become a global player. Okay, there are already some of your past successful companies who really, right, started actually just from a local mums and pups company and now become actually a global contender. And this is not only restrict within the upstream operation. Okay, I'm talking upstream today because I'm representing that unit. But Shell, as you're all pretty much aware, without much of a further introductions required, you know that actually we also operate in the midstream. We also operate in the downstream. The downstream business space, you look at all the retail stations that you're looking at, right? So that's actually our downstream business. And we have actually been adopting the same policy across board, right? And this reminds me of one stories that I had because previously when I was in downstream, I got I would say that it's a local fuel distributor. And when I say fuel distributor, basically it's the people who are driving the truck and then carrying carrying the fuels and supplying to factories and all that stuff, right? It started off by one guy, okay, who in his early 20s, right? He's just actually a truck driver for Shell. And from there, he invests money, right? He buy his first truck and then he start actually taking contract with Shell. Because why? Because he's already familiar with all our safety and the technical requirement. For him, that one is no-brainer. So he started off owning his own truck, buying his truck, and then actually start distributing fuels for us in his small compound, right, within his area that he's so-called staying. And from there, things move on. From one truck, then we change into 10 trucks, from 10 trucks to 20 trucks. And then from 20 trucks, now I think he probably now own a fleet about 400 trucks. And not only that, he's not only supplying actually for the whole Malaysia's network, but he is also supplying now outside of Malaysia. So from a single moms and pups company now become actually a regional trader in fuels, right? And this is just some of the local stories that I can actually share with you, just to excite you a bit more, right? When you sort of like when you think about your business and you think about the Shell supply chain, right? Think about how can you actually leverage the most from these relationships. Okay, and talking about that, let's move on to actually to the next slide. I think that's reached one of my most colorful slides of the day, right? So I keep talking about the opportunities that's available on the supply chain. So I mean, we have tried to go and put as much as assistance for people to go and get a better understanding. So what you could see here is an illustration in the upstream business, right? Where are the area or the categories that that is being there's a demand that we are looking for between actually the year of today, of this year to the next year, 2020 to year 2021. Okay, afraid not about this one. You can actually always, there's a small bottom left QR code there, right? That will actually link you to our website. You can always go into that particular website, look in terms of more details of what the opportunity lies ahead on there, right? Yeah, give you a bit of a glimpse. Now, this is also an area where I told you, tell us. This is an avenue where you go into the website that we have already prepared a session for you that you're able to present, right? And tell us actually your business proposition. Let us get to know yourself, your company, and the business that you are in. So if you go into this particular website, there is a so-called, I would say, a bottom section there that allow you actually to submit your information to us, including an attachment of your business proposal, right? So I would suggest actually if you deem this is something that, fits into your portfolio at this point of time, do use that opportunity, right? But keep hold to that and bookmark it, right? It may comes handy in the future itself, right? So you can feel free to use that. And last but not least, I think that leads to my final slides, right? So I show you already. For you to tell us, you can go through the website, right? There's a quick QR code there that can link you to to our webpage. But I also like to go a bit more personal today. It's also sharing with you also some of the information of my fellow colleagues. So within our upstream operation, what I have, which I'm actually leading also, is local content core group, which is actually comprises my 3 other colleagues that you could see their details here. You may also feel free to actually contact us, Okay? If you sort of like want some inquiries or actually have some propositions that you wanted to forward to us, right? This is actually where you can reach out to us also. Okay, and again, just to repeat for those who actually failed to capture the QR code earlier, the website is actually putting on there so that you won't miss it second round. All right, that's pretty much of today. I think we still can reserve the remaining 90 minutes actually for some Q&A. Right, Azwa, Johan, back to you.
So thanks for that very clear presentation, Yip. I'm not going to call you Mr. You say you don't want it to be too formal. So guys, if you've got any questions for Mr. Yip, you can address him directly, or if you're camera shy or voice shy, you can post your question on the chat and I'll read them for Yip.
All right, hey, thanks a lot. Huh?
No worries.
Okay, mari kita tengok. After 40 minutes, ada malu-malu lagi.
Yep. Any questions, perhaps, related to the business that you're doing? Are there any opportunities for those business to be part of the upstream contracting, right? Maybe you can post that, or maybe in terms of requirements. Any questions? We're happy to take them. I think they're typing. Yep. Give them a moment.
Yeah, that one I need to depend on you because I'm calling in from my mobile, so I would not actually able to see your chat in the same time actually looking at the screen.
I think one of the question is, will the slide be available? Because I did notice there's a confidential there on the slide. So will there be available for the participants?
Yeah, well, as what I promised you guys earlier, it will be shared to all of you.
Okay. All right, we'll share them via email just to limit the circulation. Is that okay, yeah?
Boleh, no problem.
Okay. So we'll send the slides to the participants' email.
Yeah, right, just help me one, guys. Just help me one thing, guys, because I have actually put in the emails of myself and also my colleagues. So please don't spam us. Okay.
I'm asking them to join your MLM, huh? So there's a question from Iman from Sabah.
Okay.
Is there an opportunity to work with Shell in the medical line?
Well, first of all, probably I answered that question in a very generic response. Is that whenever you, as I say, whenever whichever field that you think that you wanted to participate, always look at. I think the first question is look at, is there a demand to that? Okay, if there's a demand, definitely there will be an opportunity. Now I have to go and tell you, in the medical line, definitely we have actually have a strong, I would say that demand, or even actually there's a assistance actually supply chain in regards actually to our folks' medical needs. Not only our folks, not only actually the people that work for Shell, the people in Shell, but also the people that work for Shell, including our our contractors. I give you actually probably some statistics for you to work on, right? In Shell upstream alone in Malaysia, we got our staff about 1,800. That's only our staff. Now, in a given, let's say, a particular job, a turnaround. When a turnaround means actually it's a big maintenance job in our platform, right? At that point of time, we may actually have even contractors who are working with us with all their ship and barges, people sending in and all that. So at that one period of time, I may have another about additional 1,000 people at that point. So just imagine, right, that when the more of the people involved, definitely the medical needs and all that, all right, it will need to be there. And we are not talking about only on an event-based or situational base, right? We also need actually the medical needs actually as a provision, as the precaution, training, and then the daily medivac, not only to our so-called to our staff, but actually to our staff, their family members also, and all that. So probably I think Iman, to answer your question, I think the opportunity is tremendous there. But of course, we need to know what exactly that you can actually offer in here.
All right.
Okay.
We have
Okay.
three questions coming in, fast and thick and fast. So the first question is from Seth from Elevate based in Kuching. So
Okay.
he's asking two questions. Can you share some opportunities on midstream and downstream opportunities? And his second question is, does Shell have any corporate incentive programs to incentivize Shell's teams and vendors? For example, incentivizing dining, travel, etc. I think the second question is related to sort of reward-based programs for vendors and internal team at Shell. So I think Seb is involved in this experiential business where he creates experiences. So maybe he's asking from that perspective.
Well, if probably I'll answer the questions number two. Thanks, Steph, for the questions, right? Indeed, I would say the incentive that we had, let's put it this way. First of all, for our staff, right, there's a specific, I would say the scheme that we actually have for our Shell staff, right? That actually includes a wide range of benefits and also incentives for them. Okay, and we also have our standard, so-called performance and the reward, so-called rating system, and also the award system that we actually provide to them. Okay, so that I would say is pretty much actually driven from actually our global standard. So it is not saying that probably put it in short, you cannot actually saying that here in Malaysia, I will run a scheme that's perhaps actually slightly different from the colleagues that I had actually in Singapore and all that. The beauty actually about Shell being actually in the group is that we are all running actually on that particular same scheme. So the part about in the Shell stuff, I would say probably slightly a bit more limited, but there may be actually some sort of the marketing avenue that is available. So internally, I would say opportunity probably a bit more restricted. But externally, when talk about with our third party, actually with our partners and all that, right? Each and every of the contract that we actually send out to them, there will be actually some certain form of performance incentive will be included inside there. And I can tell you that one is pretty much various. There's a different form and shape. Some probably actually in the form of a monetary, some actually in the form of actual opportunity and all that. So that will be, I think, is a bit more area in regards to potential in terms of actually things that you're offering. Now, if to my limited understanding of what you can actually offer, I would say that probably it will be much more matched towards actually onto our downstream business. Reasons being because in our downstream business, we involve a lot of the front end marketing, where we deal with actually both people, actually everyone on the street, you and I, we call that actually the retail business itself. But also actually we have dealing a lot with the corporate customers, right? Some of the the established conglomerate that you know of actually in Malaysia and all that. Those actually is our range of our customers. So if I roughly understand of actually the experience offerings that you're able to provide, it may be much more suitable actually to the downstream business. Right? So I hope that gives you some guidance. Okay, Seth?
Right. The next question.
I'm just answering you based on my limited and very surface understanding. So may not be entirely correct, but just actually to give you from some potential pivoting there.
All right.
Sorry,
the next is from Hazik. I think
this is a familiar name.
He has met you before, so he's glad to meet you again. So his question is, from the opportunity funnel, does power supply development include solar powered equipment?
I think you know my answers to that, right? Now, okay, probably I take a two steps back in answering that question right now. If you guys actually follow Shell very closely from the global to the local news and all that, right? One of actually the primary focus within our group is the energy transitions. And our CEO, Ben Van Beurden, has even actually made a company pledge to saying that we will go for net zero emission by the year 2050. Okay, and what does this mean is that we have been already stepping up a lot of actually our, I would say that renewable energy transitions. Okay, And to give you guys something closest to the home, the correct platform, the one that actually just successfully got their first guest in the March of this year, is basically powered by solar, right? So more and more of such an opportunity is definitely, I would say, is in the pipeline. But the question is, we also look at the technical readiness plus actually the commercial viability of it, right? Because like it or not, we are here actually to make a business, right? And then you're all aware of that. So you need to actually make sure that there is a delicate balance between the technical availability and whether does it actually brings in the economical sense to put it in place, right? But definitely, I would say that is one of the lens that we are looking at, and you could see even something as like our offshore platform, who people were saying that it's just a matter of actually some steel, some platforms, some deck, and some people working on that. Hey, we are already moving to our first solar power. I mean, my other colleagues actually in the other areas, they also look at the 3D printing, drone, so-called as a means actually to deliver materials. Some even actually look at the wind power actually to how to run it, and then our retail station, you could see more and more actually coming in with providing the electrical supply and all that. So yeah, I can tell you that's actually definitely one of the areas that we're looking at.
All right. So the next question, Yip, is I think quite specific, perhaps technical. So Alexander Fowler is asking, does Shell use any open source software in the solutions? Does Shell use cloud solutions like Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud, or does Shell use proprietary systems that is on premise?
Well, I would say that as I'm not the IT expert, but I would say roughly as the IT users for Shell, there's a mixed bag to that. I believe actually your question's more alluding a bit towards to on the security front of it. Okay, there are actually some of these. I won't say pretty much at the open source, but let's say it's the software on the service, what SOAS, that kind of services. Sorry, that's not on my field, so probably the jargons I get is wrong. But we also leveraging on the power of the cloud technology, because as you could see, it provides that kind of the convenience. It actually provides actually that kind of the endless expanded spectrum that we can sort of like tapping it on. But the key thing I think towards to your question is it is about the security features, because we have actually our own enterprise so-called program. Okay, we are running in the backbone of our SAP. And quite a number of what we do see, the software solutions that we explore, especially even with some of the local players, is that, that interaction, not only just only on the security part of it, but that interaction from your software, your systems to able to talk seamlessly with SAP, the interface of it, that is, I think, somehow was a bit lacking. I mean, I myself have some personal experiences dealing with some of the brilliant mind local suppliers who come up with fantastic technology solutions, right? But when it comes into the software itself, when we go and ask them, so have you talked about how does actually your system able to interface with my SAP and all that? And we always found out that that is one area that either they have lack the capability to do so, or probably just lack emphasis on it. Okay, and trust me, this is actually one area that is very essential, because there are many opportunities we got to give it a miss, because that particular area that I mentioned to you, the interface are not being well addressed, and it's almost to the extent that sometimes because it's not well addressed, if I'm actually going to look on it, right, I may need to spend only about $100,000 for a solution, but I may need to go and spend $500,000 just to manage on that interface. Okay, but what if actually, let's say, if we turn the ball around, that you have already looked on this area much earlier, that become not an issue, then even you give me a $500,000 solution, I will consider it because it fits into my bill, right? But I'm not sure actually, Alexander, is actually that's the where you're heading towards to. Okay? But for me, when you talk about software, so-called solution, it is actually that security and the interfaces that I would say kind of bit of a miss for us, because I can tell you in Malaysia we have many new technology and software development, be actually on the augmented reality, virtual reality, some of actually this kind of things that actually where you can imagine like in a tech world, right? I'm sitting here, but I can actually already sort of like giving instructions to my folks actually in the offshore, few thousand kilometers away. All those are available and developed in-house, and we have actually a lot of actually Malaysians or say that the technocrat that perhaps that is available, but most of the time our hands are tied because of that, especially in terms of the security and the interfaces, where that's where the area that is not being taken into regard as part and parcel of the solution when you provide to them. Or maybe it's yes, or maybe it's actually just too expensive. But I would say that for Alexander's question, I did actually raise the same questions to MDEC, our Malaysia Digital and I think the E is stand for Entrepreneur Corporation.
Digital Economy Corporation.
Thanks. You're always able to correct me on that. Yeah.
No.
So I throw the same question. I say that if especially there's in one area that is being a bit too expensive, right, for a local developer to work on it, and we know that that's essential, and that's not only for Shell, for any other major corporations into this country, everyone have that kind of the same problem. So I would say that, hey, MDEC, why don't you just think about something collectively for you to actually work on to that development? Because right now in the market, now, again, I'm going to throw another jargon, pardon me, actually, for those who are not aware of this, right? We have fantastic middleware available that can actually become like a middleman translator for local solutions and to company, this kind of enterprise so-called software. Okay? Well, why don't I actually make some sort of like a universal adapter, right? A middleware that can help to bridge that gap. Okay, and I would say that this is something that can be led by MTech or some other institutions actually to do so, right? So, sorry, Alexander, I probably digress too much actually from what you are asking for, but I'm hoping what I'm actually so-called just inform you, just to give you a bit more insight, right? It's not really about the solution, but sometimes also the adaptation of that solutions into our system. All right?
Yep, we have a similar question from Dennis, but I think in general, both Dennis and Alexander's question is alluding more towards, is there opportunity for application of software developer that are developing their products to enter into Shell supply chain, or is it something that mostly decided at the group level? So for local...
Sorry, let me stop you for a while. This is some issue about working from home. Can you please actually go and talk to your brother first? Go. Coco, please help me to take care of your brother. 等下我给你，你先去先。Sorry, guys.
All right.
I get used to it. Working from home, this is what we got.
Yesterday, I had like hammering sound in my house.
That's why you choose Sunday. Definitely no constructions happening.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. I think that question is from Dennis, right?
Yes. So just in general, I think we're seeing in both Sabah and Sarawak a lot of young entrepreneurs are going into this IT solution or technology solutions. But I think Shell being such a huge company, right? Is there opportunity for local inputs, right? Or is it more like, for example, software as a service, right? I know with the comms team, they do use Salesforce and all that, right? So for local developers, are there opportunity for them, or are there like a pathway that they can go into towards becoming a contractor for Shell in the IT space?
I think actually for that goes back actually to my earlier plea to all of you, right? Tell us about the great solutions that you had in mind. Because one thing, let's say what we wanted to actually approach it is try also not to boil the ocean. And what I'm trying to say is that, as I mentioned, in the Malaysia upstream operation, right, there's so many players within here. But if we wanted to go for something as grand as, like, let's say, an industry standard, that kind of adaptation, it's definitely going to be a big struggle, especially, let's say, if you are an entrepreneur. Okay. But what can be done is that for each and every of these operator, be it myself or other companies, right? What we do is actually we are actually providing that platform to slowly introduce, as a platform actually, to introduce such a solutions. I give you another examples, right? We did actually spoke about adopting some kind of a digital efforts. You know, being in conventional oil and gas business, right? Some calls actually the dinosaur business. First being because actually we're extracting stuff from the dinosaur, and second also we are already a very long business, right? And this business, the process itself, there's many I would say manual paper mode process involved. And we did actually work with some of the even a local provider to help us to think that how can I transfer all this paper into digital. And one of the things is we tested it in my supply base. Because in my supply base, I have a lot of inventory. And right now, believe me or not, we just moved on to barcode solution. Okay, if any of you can Google right now, you could know that barcode was introduced as early as, I think, more than 25 years ago. Okay? Yes. But we just started to use barcode to tag our, each and every of the component and our inventory to use it into our supply base. Okay, but we are working with some local company to look at, okay, now how can I bring in the RFID solution to help me to go and seamlessly tag my equipment, that I will know. I do not need to actually get an army of my workers to go down there to do a stock count, checking it, and that's actually sort of like my yearly exercise. With RFID basis, I can just do a quick scan, and then I will know already what's actually my, my stock and my level of inventory. And this is that kind of a technology that we bring into this industry, because basically my peers, my other PAC, even Petronas, none of them actually are looking at RFID yet. And this is actually an avenue where we are saying that through us, we bring this ingenious idea and then start to actually so-called share with the rest of my players, rest of my peers, right? Probably actually, once actually that adoption level become, I said that more and more people subscribe to that, it will become actually the future industry standard. So probably that's not the direct answers to Danny's question, but I would actually just say that while we don't forefront a certain sort of like that kind of a development, but we can be the platform for you to actually, through us, to introduce that actually to the market, to the industry. Okay, so use us as that platform itself.
All right. Yeah, maybe can we take two more questions? We don't want to take too much of your time. So I think one of the questions, I can translate it to broader context so that everybody can benefit from it. Mm-hmm. In my experience as well, because we do work with Petronas vendor and all that, I know for the fact that with the oil and gas industry as a whole, right, standards are very important for people to supply certain things. For example, they have to have API certification or ISO, right? Mm-hmm. So how important are these standards for people to sort of like break through into the upstream or even across downstream and midstream space? And is there like a point of reference for them to look at what are the certification or standards that they need to have so that they can work towards getting it? That's number one. And number two, we have another question from Seth, who's asking, due to the COVID-19 situation, are there any specific programs or initiative by Shell to assist in terms of community and sustainability?
All right. I think for the first questions, pretty much simple answers to that, right? Follow the minimum technical requirement that I mentioned earlier. because the API standard itself, right? I mean, you've got actually 1001 actually chapters. It would be pretty tough for you to actually to look and get yourself abreast with all of it. Now, even actually before that, let me give you guys actually some appreciation. All those standards, the API, ISO, you name it and all, it's actually served for the same purpose. Basically, it's talking about ensuring, you know, the safety level of both actually the equipment that we wanted to apply to and also our standard of practice. Hold on. Didi. Right, sorry about that again. Hey. Probably it's a cue for me to think that I'm up to its time.
Okay, carry on.
No. Let me just quickly carry on that. So
Yeah.
First of all, for those actually who are interested, right, don't look around. Look at actually the MTR, the minimum technical requirement, and understand from there what are the standards required, and see are those actually will be the one that suitable for you to understand, and then for you to actually to get it in place. That's my first one. Otherwise, I tell you, you're going to be overwhelmed with all the all the different standards and all that. Now, I wanted to go and share that indeed, if you notice, there is quite a number of actually a number of different standards. Okay, 等下，你可以去玩下吗？等下这边有人吓我了。Okay. Right, but I would say that in terms of the standards, that's what we have been always trying to year in, year out, in regards actually to standardize the requirement among all the key players. People like actually ourselves, Petronas, Exxon, Murphy, and all that, right? Because we do understand that sometimes for the same thing, we are all actually asking for few different standards. So this is actually one area that we're working on, at least to reduce actually the variation, then easy for people actually, for esteemed entrepreneur like yourself to adopt that. Now, on the second question in regards to COVID, I would say there's many that actually we have actually done so far. Even if I think if you could recall one of the things that we did is that, okay, come, you're going to sit here, you join me here. You join me. You join me in the call. Let me go and show your face so you will not disturb me. Okay. See? See that he is doing things here. Let me answer one more question. Okay. Then I'll给你吃东西. Sorry, he's hungry for his tea time.
Okay.
Now, on COVID, there are plenty that we did. One of the things, even if you look at our isopropyls, our chemical plants actually in the Netherlands, in Netherlands or in Denmark, can't really remember the location. We even so far step up the isopropyl production. Basically, that's one of the components for the alcohol produced for your hand sanitizers. To basically to go and supply to that. We also actually did some sort of a very impromptu 3D printing, okay, through actually our Center of Excellence, and those are some of the ventilators that we provided to go and support to the hospital when they need to go and all of a sudden you need to create to fulfill the surge of the demand of the ventilators there. Now on the local front also, we did some sort of community support. I mean, we part of time parcel also of the expansion of our care program. We did actually supply containers by containers, some sort of a face mask, and some sort of the glove and other form of actually the basic provision was actually supplied actually to both some of the hospitals and also some schools actually within the areas that we operate. There's plenty that actually I can't actually mention all, but there are, I would say, that good articles available inside that you could see. But more actually probably using this opportunity, I would like to go and hear from you. If you can say that, hi, Shao, I believe actually this is actually where we can actually do more, and this is actually where you can sort of like step in to help us also. So take that as actually as an opportunity, because definitely this whole entire COVID situation is truly unprecedented and unexpected for us, right? So I think so far we have actually pulled quite a number of actually collaborative efforts. I give you one example. It's back to actually to the face mask that we do, right? I mean, almost I would say less than 72 hours, we got to think about how can I provide sufficient face masks to all my staff in Malaysia. We're talking about 8,000 of us, plus actually all the contractors that are working with us. So within the 72 hours and through the support from one of our suppliers, we managed actually to source for the rightful specs and all that. And then within a couple of span of a week, we have actually containers after containers coming in. So I'm actually showing these examples to you to saying that to make things happen, Shell can't do it alone. We need the supply chain. We need actually the ecosystem to support us. Okay, and this is actually one avenue that where you can be a part actually of that ecosystem, right? Well, I think the only limitation to that is actually your own imaginations, your creativity. Okay, like I go back actually to the first story that when I started to this call, right? A guy who just actually doing recycling paper wrapping for food, from coming in thinking that they are just a new entrepreneur through this liveWIRE, wanted to understand something and perhaps eventually looking at the local front market of F&B to support, right? Now he came out actually with a big aspiration that at one day he can actually supply actually to the wider upstream operations to be the part of actually that supply chain. So I would say use your imaginations, right? The only limitations is only you yourself.
All right. With that, thank you so much, Yip. Thank you so much to all the participants. Thank you to our partners in Sabah as well, Rima Synergy, Hannah and Johan. And thanks to Jason as well. So before we leave, I'm just gonna conclude with, I think that one of the main point to take away from this session, which is if you want to work with Shell, you need to tell them what is it that you do, right? So I think from there, I think with what Yip shared with the presentation, we know the processes with the upstream sector. You have to be registered with Petronas under the SWAC code. So I recommend, maybe we can share as well, the link for you to look at this Petronas guideline to register as a vendor with the PAC, PSC contracts, right?